What is up? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Shred Show Live. Can you believe it? It's a start to a new week, and what better way to start the week than being joined by two of the brightest, two of the best, two of the most knowledgeable people in our industry, especially when it comes to the valuation space. I am so excited to have these incredible guests, and we're going to be having a conversation that is so critically important, that is so pertinent to what is going on in our industry. Ladies and gentlemen, you are not going to want to miss this. You're going to want to share this video. You're going to want to get all your friends in your entire office. If you're in mortgage, if you're in real estate, this is going to be absolutely critical to the future of our industry. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Are you ready? It is time to shred. Good morning, Shredders, and welcome to another Shred Show Live. It is Monday, May 23rd. I cannot believe it. Time flies when you're having fun. Scott and I were just talking about that. And speaking of these two incredible guests, I cannot tell you how excited I am to be joined by first-time guests of the show, Cristy Conolly, the EVP of Valuation Modernization. That is a mouthful right there. I'm so excited to have her. We're going to hear a lot from her. And then, of course, we've got the always talented, the better beard than mine, Mr. Scott Rose, Chief Innovation Officer of Class Valuation. Good morning to both of you, and welcome to another Shred. So, Cristy, I'm excited to have you here this morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And Scott, you're just happy and dapper as ever, my friend. I have beard envy. It doesn't happen very often, but it's just a good looking, that just for men gray in there. It's just, that's a whole nother conversation, but you're looking good as ever. So I'm really excited to have this conversation because as we started presenting it, as we've discussed it, I think this is so critically pertinent to what is happening in our industry. We're always seeing change. We're seeing evolution. So I'm excited to get in this. Before we do though, I want to take just a second and quick introduction. Cristy, as I've got to know you a little bit more, I'm very excited to have you. But for those who may not know you, give a little introduction about yourself and how you got started in this industry.
Sure. So I'm a certified residential appraiser. I've been in the industry for 19 years. And for the last decade, I've been on the AMC side of it. I was a chief appraiser and compliance officer for a nationwide AMC for 9 years. Then I ran operations for an AMC, and that AMC was acquired by Class, and which fortunately kind of brought me over to Class and now to Scott's team, and working on innovation and modernization with Scott.
19 years. So you started what, when you were 10? Is that when you got into this space? They're starting younger and younger, Scott. That's crazy. And you're picking up talent so young. But Scott, I've had you on the show. You're always incredibly brilliant. You always have so much to share. But for those who may not know you, a quick intro on yourself as well.
That's a great intro, Josh. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Scott Rose. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Class. And so I really get to work with a great group of people, a great team of people, our customers, providers, et cetera, focusing on product and solution modernization within the appraisal industry. So we're really focused on bringing the future and trying to continue to advance our profession going forward.
Oh, see that always spot on. Scott has just a way with words that he can always just share. And I get excited just hearing his introduction. I'm like, this is what they do. This is their brilliant team that they're creating. And the conversation that we're having today, literally, again, I've loved working with Class and the conversations that we've had, especially because the housing market is hot. Valuations, home ownership is one of those things that is so relevant. The dream of owning a home as an American is such an exciting time. And the entire team at Class Valuation is focused on making sure we have the data, the information, everything that we could possibly need to make this process smooth, to make it efficient, and to make it accurate. And that's our conversation today is just around that. So as we dive into this, ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions, if you have comments, throw them in the chat. We'd love to put them as part of our discussion today. But I want to start here because Cristy, as we really think about modernization, as we think about innovation, I mean, your job title literally has modernization in it, but let's talk about responsible innovation. Let's talk about responsible modernization and kind of set the foundation of what does that even mean?
Yeah, so responsible modernization is something we're really focused on at Class. As Scott mentioned, it's really what we're doing and why I was fortunate enough to have this role come up. That was a perfect fit for me. Responsible modernization is really focused around data and technology and diversity at this point. So at Class, we really leverage the data that we have. It's creating consistent and repeatable processes that using technology, and that provides a source of truth property data. So there's no subjectivity. Everything is objective and transparent. And so with our 3D scans and our property fingerprint, if you have 20 different people go out and inspect a property, you will have 20 results that are exactly the same. There won't be any errors or omissions or subjective ways that the data is being presented to you. And so we think it's really important to have that responsible and supported information that we're providing to the end user of the valuations.
So, Scott, she mentioned two things in here that I kind of want you to build on a little bit, because diversity data, you guys have always been a data-rich company. We've talked about this multiple times in the past, but that plays a big role when it comes to innovation and modernization of our industry.
100%. I mean, when I think about responsible innovation, I think about not the opportunity to use advanced technologies, but I think about it as a requirement. We need to leverage the advanced technologies that exist out in the marketplace today. And there's a lot of ways to handle these, changing landscapes, and applying the right technologies to it to ensure we can get to those repeatable processes and more objective criteria is really important for the future, and keeping all stakeholders in mind as we do that. So that's something that we've been focused on the whole time at Class. Over the last 3 years, we've been working on this transition in our space, is ensuring that we're keeping all stakeholders in mind: the appraiser, the lenders, the regulators, the investors, the consumers. That everything that we're doing is trying to improve the experience for all the stakeholders.
Oh, hey, Cristy, I want to build on this just for a minute longer. You guys have both kind of alluded to this, but Scott mentioning they're your stakeholders. It's important to have responsibility across the board for not only yourself as, in the valuation side, but as lenders, as technology partners. How important is that? And how is it that you guys are setting that precedence when it comes to being the example? How important is it across the board for everybody to have this responsible innovation and modernization?
Well, Class Valuation, as Scott mentioned, has been working on this for years, and with different agency stakeholders and GSEs, and, being part of different efforts and initiatives to really review what we're doing, see what works, see what doesn't work, see what needs to change and what's necessary. And something that you mentioned that I think is really important is definitely focusing on working with all the industry stakeholders and making sure that every family, every consumer, there's fairness and valuation across the board. And that goes with, again, the data. When you're looking at data, using tools and resources that eliminate the subjectivity and, opinions that aren't supported, I think it's really important to be able to provide all of that.
Ooh, I think it's critically important. We want to start eliminating some of these things. The data is it's just there. It's almost impossible to corrupt data in this way. And that's why it's so cool to see a company like Class so focused on this. And I know, kind of moving into where I want to go with this, is you guys were actually recognized recently by the Brookings Institute and Ashoka's Changemaker Challenge, which valuing homes in Black communities. I know you guys work very, very closely with David Batney over at Guild Mortgage, but I want to talk about this. You guys this is a huge deal. This is something where, again, especially as an industry, when we see companies like Class making strides, putting themselves out there and being recognized for things like this, it needs to be talked out more. I know I've kind of heard it out there, but I'm really excited. So let's dive into this a little bit, Cristy. What was this? How were you guys recognized, and what kind of talk about this entire or not? It's not an award, but there's being recognized for this. Let's talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, I'll actually defer to Scott on this. This was, Scott's baby and Scott's participation that really led to the recognition.
Sure, I'm happy to. We're obviously very honored. I think what most important about this process was something that was really validating. It was done by outside consultants, really looking in from all of these innovators that brought a lot of solutions to the table and working on solving for these issues that we've been faced with over the last however many years and decades. And what they came is they recognized that this type of technology has the opportunity to really make an impact because of the things Cristy's been talking about: source data, repeatable processes, sending someone to the property to collect information and getting the same results every time. We've seen a lot of inconsistency in property reporting, as well as now you have a fully transparent digital twin of the home that can't be manipulated. So you always are going to have full insight. It's very comprehensive. It's very rich. It's very digital, right? You have this virtual rendition of the home. And with that comes again, a lot of transparency that allows everyone to have full insight into that home. And then additionally, you're separating a bit of the appraiser from interacting a little bit more of an arm's length interaction with the consumer at the property to continue to mitigate potential biases that may result from that.
So,
and it was.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, it was really David Batney and our partners at Guild. We've been working with them in these tests and learns for quite some time. And David is very close to these issues. He kind of came to us and said, hey, are you aware of this challenge? We should really participate, and was very instrumental in putting together our write-ups and our submission to make this happen. And we really worked collectively with them to get this done. So.
Dude, you nailed this, Scott. This is what I want to talk about. And Cristy, I would love for you to hear. How important is it to have partners like Guild, have partners, again, lender partners, technology partners? This isn't just, as much as we'd love to see class, and you guys are continuing to lead the way, you're leading by example, but how important is it to have partners who are bought into this process, who are bought into these type of changes that are being made?
It's really crucial, because to have, as Scott mentioned with Guild Mortgage, when you have lender partners that are willing to try these new processes, try these new products, figure out how they fit into their system and work with their loans and their workflow, they're not willing to take that risk and learn and embrace the change. We can provide it and produce it and create it all day long. But if there's nobody that's willing to use it, it will go to waste. We also partner, an important part on our end with the innovation is partnering with McKissick and DataMaster. McKissick, we are partnering with on an educational piece, and they're putting together different courses regarding fair housing histories and, how discrimination and bias can be eliminated, or, appraisers can learn about when they might have unconscious bias and what to do and, how to work around that. And DataMaster provides a lot of tools that will prevent that. And if appraiser does have an unconscious bias that obviously they're not aware of, they can really look at data and say, oh, this was my predetermined thought on what was happening in this area. But now that I look at the data, I realize I was wrong, and this is what needs to happen here. So I think that having those partners is really crucial to the overall responsible improvement in the industry.
Well, and Scott, even more from what Cristy's saying too, is helping them not only have the lender partners, but having them adopt it. There's one thing about talking about it, it's kind of being out there, but it's actually seeing our partners. We talk about adoption in this industry, from technology pieces to even valuation, but getting companies to not only just talking about it. And that's why I love conversations like this, is because talking about it, educating our general, just the industry about this, but it's then the adoption. But I know class is so big into that. It's providing a way for their partners to adopt something like this, to get involved with it, to get their feedback. How important is adoption of something like this? And again, this is, for me, this is one of those things that truly helps us as an industry continue to move forward, as Cristy mentioned, to start eliminating biases.
Man, you could really get me going on this topic of adoption, because it is critical. I probably spend majority of my time, and I have over the last several years, really working on building the adoption. And I think, again, it goes back to responsible innovation and using advanced technologies, for one, that really provide each person in the process the experience that they need to see the way to the future, right? Like appraisers were kind of our initial adoption. We've really overcome that barrier. We've got thousands of appraisers who love this product and solution now that work closely with us. I mean, our turnaround time from the time we receive data to delivery is less than a day and a half right now with our panel of appraisers that we work with. And we've done well over 15,000 of this type of solution up to this point. And so, it moves on though. Like the desktop appraisal we've talked about on the show before is really, the idea about that is getting that full data collection done at the time of list. And so now it's starting to work with listing agents and with MLS platforms around the country to understand where they can put this data, how they can incorporate it into the private section within the MLS platform, and create a data package that is standard, that's ready to go for the appraiser to support things like the desktop. And I know, desktop is something that we supplement today with process to get it done right, not leaving it to the industry to just kind of randomly know whether you do or don't have all that right information. But downstream, a year, 2 years from now, I think it will be a standard where this data is captured at time of list, and we're getting appraisals back in a matter of a day, day and a half from the time of request. So the continued buy-in from all these stakeholders, we've been working up to this point, more appraisers, investors, mortgage insurance companies, and others, to let them see the path to get their buy-in so we can really get it out there and now move it forward in a more general population.
Oh, dude, I see. And I know you and I have talked about adoption before, Scott, and it is one of those things where you and I have both, we could spend an hour just on that alone. But kind of along these same lines, Cristy, you mentioned something as we were getting ready, as we were kind of talking about some of these things and how we would structure this. You mentioned something that I think is really important. And I want to, as we shift gears with it, talk to us about what a Pave report is. And actually the Pave task force has been set up from when it comes to adoption, as Scott has talked about, but talk to us about what this Pave report is and how it's actually helping with all this modernization as well.
Sure. So the Pave report, or the Pave task force, was an initiative that actually, President Biden started in June of 2021, and involves multiple, federal agencies that work together to look at the history of, valuation bias in the housing, and lending industry. And they put together a task force with an action plan. And just in March of this year is when the action plan came out. And there were 5 core commitments within that action plan. And a lot of it is what we talked about the responsible modernization. It's increasing transparency and accountability, empowering consumers to know their rights and to be aware of when they may see a bias or have a feeling that it may be present. It's diversifying the appraisal industry, and leveraging data and expertise. So, class has already been well ahead of the curve with the data and the technology side of the modernization. And now we're working on, the diversity and the consumer facing side of it. Prior to the Pave action plan coming out, we had implemented some different changes with our QC process. We have an auto QC check now for certain words that could represent bias in an appraisal. So if any keywords are present, it flags it, and we'll do a deeper dive and review of that report and, proceed as needed. One of the big things that came away with the Pave action plan, again, is empowering consumers and having them aware of what's going on, what their rights are, what they can do if they feel there is an issue. And so we have revamped our reconsideration of value process a little bit to be, more consumer friendly. And we have an escalations team with certified licensed appraisers that handle all RRVs. And we still obviously make sure they're air compliant and what's being presented to the appraiser is appropriate. But we used to filter it a lot, review everything with our appraisers internally, because they have a lot of knowledge and understanding and would be able to reply and maybe not necessarily pass everything on to the appraiser. But now we really feel it's important to let the consumer be heard. So whatever they feel, even if it may just be that they may not be understanding a piece of the appraisal, we're sending it to the actual appraiser that signed the report, so that they can review it and provide the response, and the consumer knows they were heard and they're getting response from the person that actually determined their value, not the AMC.
Holy cow. That was so like there was so much. Empowering the consumer is one of those things that I absolutely, and this is why I love class. This is why I love the team. This is why I love the focus, is because, Scott, this is something where I think we miss it so frequently, because some people think of class valuation like, oh, they provide us with values. They help us with appraisals, and that's all they do. It's so much deeper than just providing the mortgage industry with an appraisal. Some people may think it is so superficial, like, oh, that's what class does. But this discussion in and of itself, there's so much more background. There's so much more that you guys are doing behind the scenes that may not be discussed. And that's why I was so excited to have this conversation. You guys are working tirelessly. You're putting so much time and efforts and resources into things like this, including diversity, including to better the industry as a whole. You're not just there to help with the appraisal process, Scott.
Nope, it's a lot deeper than that. And there are a lot of people at class working on it. I mean, you can just already see the value of Cristy's addition on our team, that we were fortunate enough to get her on board. And there are many others, with similar talent that's very deep, broad industry backgrounds, and a lot of attention. We like to say high talent, low ego, because you have to, when you have that large of a group of talented individuals working on all these problems. But as you said earlier, we could spend hours talking about every issue that we have, that we continue to, focus on to improve the experience for all of our partners out there.
And that's just it. It's always trying to improve the process. Every time, that's why it's been so fun to have discussions like this. It's always focused on how can we better than it? How can we partner? How can we collaborate and work together for the betterment of this industry? How can we protect the consumer, the American consumer that is trying to achieve that dream of home ownership? And like you guys have both alluded to so many times on this conversation, like that's what we're all about. We want to help the consumer. We want to protect them. We want to serve them. We want to make sure they have accurate, they want to have the correct data that's needed to buy a home these days. This gets me excited. This is again, so many people think of just like, oh, we're going to talk appraisals, but it's so much more than that. And I can't thank you enough for both of you guys for the knowledge and the expertise we share. Anything else you guys want to share on this topic in particular as we start to wrap things up?
I'm good. I think we did a great job covering a lot of good topics today. It really flowed well.
Great job, dude. This was brilliant. Both of you guys, like, this is one of those, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I said this a second ago, having conversations like this is just the segue. This is getting it started to see companies like Class start to implement, to start to help companies adopt the change. The modernization of our industry is happening now, ladies and gentlemen. And that's why companies like Class, that's why people like Scott, like Cristy, John, Frost, the entire team over at Class, we are working together. We are partners in this. We want to see the dream of home ownership happen for everybody. We want a diverse culture. We want things to happen. And it takes people like Class to start to lead the way, to break the ground for us all. So huge shout out to your entire team. Huge shout out to everybody over there. Scott and Cristy, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing all that you did. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you guys got something out of this. I got something out of this. This made my head start to spin is how can we be better? How can we start collaborating? How can we partner better to ultimately, as Cristy said, empower the consumers out there in this modern age? So Scott, Cristy, thanks so much for everything you guys shared today.
Thanks for having us.
Guys, this is such a brilliant conversation. And as always, we try to provide value. We try to provide you with the conversations that are helping you. We as mortgage and real estate professionals, we have to become better. We have to look for the future. We have to innovate. We have to focus on modernization, because if we don't, we're going to get left in the dust. So with that, as always, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you. We love you. Now it's time for all of you guys to go shred, go show up, hustle, repeat every day. See ya.